34%. That's the improvement in insulin sensitivity that showed up in a 12-week randomized controlled trial involving one of three common foods. Not a medication, not a supplement, not anything a physician wrote a prescription for. A food you can pick up at Walmart for less than $2. And here's the fact that ought to trouble you. The overwhelming majority of endocrinologists across America have never brought this study up with a single patient. Not because the research is fake. It was published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal and carried out at a research institution based in Illinois. It isn't concealed. It simply isn't explained. Eggs, nuts, avocado, three foods that millions of older adults already consume with their health in mind. And the reason so many of them never get the full payoff has nothing to do with picking the wrong food. It comes down to what their physician never sat down and explained about how these particular foods behave inside a body that's wrestling with insulin resistance, what they actually do, when you should eat them, what you should pair them with, and what quietly cancels out the benefit before the food ever reaches your cells. That's exactly what this video breaks down. I'm Dr. Narita. I've spent more than 2 decades working directly with patients managing insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Let's dig in. I want to open with something that took place back in 1968. A researcher by the name of Ansel Keys released a study that would end up reshaping American nutrition guidance for the following 5 decades. His argument: dietary fat, especially saturated fat and cholesterol, was responsible for heart disease. The American Heart Association embraced his findings. Eggs got labeled the enemy. Dietary cholesterol became public health target number 1. Physicians were instructed to push low-fat, low-cholesterol eating plans. For generation after generation, older Americans were told, cut back on eggs, skip the yolk, load up on carbohydrates instead. Bread, cereal, pasta, those got the green light. Here's the problem with Keyes' original research. He cherry-picked data from 6 nations when he actually had access to data from 22. The countries whose numbers didn't support his theory got left out entirely. This was published in 1968, and the dietary recommendations built on top of it dictated what doctors told patients for roughly 50 years afterward. By the time researchers had methodically taken apart the saturated fat theory, one study at a time, one meta-analysis at a time, millions of seniors had already spent decades steering clear of the very foods that current clinical research suggests may actually guard against insulin resistance. That's the backdrop for everything in this video. Not a conspiracy theory, just documented history, and reason enough to take a serious look at what today's research actually says about eggs, nuts, and avocado for older adults managing their blood sugar. Let's start with eggs. What your doctor likely told you: cap it at 2 or 3 per week, keep an eye on cholesterol. Here's what current research actually demonstrates. A systematic review published in the journal Nutrients pulled together 10 randomized controlled trials examining egg intake among people who either had type 2 diabetes or were at risk for it. The result: eating 6 to 12 eggs weekly produced no meaningful change in total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, or fasting glucose when compared against control groups. Not 6 eggs total, 6 to 12 eggs every single week. And no notable rise in cardiovascular risk indicators either. A different study, published in Nutrition and Metabolism, found that eating 1 egg daily for 5 weeks led to a 4.4% drop in fasting blood glucose, along with significantly improved HOMA-IR scores. HOMA-IR is the clinical gold standard for measuring insulin resistance. A lower HOMA-IR score means your cells respond better to insulin. Better responsiveness means less glucose left circulating in your blood. Now here's the mechanism almost nobody bothers to explain. Eggs rank among the highest quality complete protein sources you can find. Unlike carbohydrates, protein by itself doesn't trigger a major insulin spike. But protein accomplishes something just as valuable. It slows down how quickly your stomach empties, and it activates satiety hormones, GLP-1 and GIP, which signal your pancreas to get insulin ready for what's coming next. When eggs are eaten ahead of carbohydrates, those satiety hormones are already switched on by the time carbs show up. Glucose enters your bloodstream against a pancreas that's already primed. The resulting spike is flatter, and it doesn't last as long. Now compare that to eating a bowl of instant oatmeal on an empty stomach with 0 protein involved. Nothing has been prepped. Glucose rushes in completely unopposed. The egg itself isn't magic here. It's the order in which you eat, that becomes the actual mechanism. So what does the research support? 2 eggs at breakfast, most mornings, whole eggs included. The yolk contains the choline, a compound essential for liver function and nerve signaling. If eggs aren't your thing, Greek yogurt with live active cultures, 1 to 2 cups, is the nearest functional substitute. Comparable protein, similar effect on gastric emptying. You can find it at Walmart for under $3 a large tub. One clarification I want to make sure I state precisely. For anyone with existing cardiovascular disease, not just risk factors, but a diagnosed condition, your cardiologist's specific instructions override general population research. The broad statement that eggs are fine applies to the general senior population managing blood sugar and insulin resistance. Your personal medical history still matters most. Now, nuts. What most seniors already know, they're healthy, good fats, grab a handful. What your doctor never got around to explaining, the specific type of nut, the portion size, and the timing relative to your meals determine whether you're actually capturing a blood sugar benefit or simply adding extra calories to your day. Let's talk mechanism first. Nuts are rich in monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, and fiber. Together, these 3 elements slow gastric emptying, blunt the glycemic response to a mixed meal, and improve insulin sensitivity over time by lowering inflammation. A meta-analysis published in Diabetes Care, reviewing 21 randomized controlled trials, found that nut consumption meaningfully improved glycemic control in people with type 2 diabetes, with the strongest effects on fasting glucose and A1C showing up in trials that ran 8 weeks or longer. That phrase, 8 weeks or longer, matters. This is a cumulative effect, not something that happens overnight, which means occasional nut eating does a little something. Consistent daily portions do considerably more. But here's where most people lose the benefit entirely. Portion size. 1 ounce is the clinically studied amount. 1 ounce of almonds works out to roughly 23 almonds. 1 ounce of walnuts is about 14 halves. 1 ounce of mixed nuts is a small handful, not the generous double fistful most people pour straight from the container. Once you're at 2 or 3 ounces per sitting, which is remarkably easy to do without noticing in front of the TV, you're tacking on 300 to 400 extra calories of fat to your daily total. The blood sugar benefit doesn't grow with bigger portions, the calorie count does. And not every nut behaves the same way for blood sugar. Walnuts specifically contain alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid that lowers inflammatory cytokines directly tied to insulin resistance. Research published in the Journal of the American Heart Association found that daily walnut intake improved blood vessel function and reduced LDL particle size, a cardiovascular risk marker in adults at risk for type 2 diabetes. Almonds, meanwhile, have the strongest evidence specifically for reducing post-meal glucose spikes. Eaten before or alongside a carbohydrate-containing meal, almonds slow the rate at which carbohydrates are absorbed, flattening the post-meal blood sugar rise. What actually works? 1 ounce, measured. Use a kitchen scale once just to train your eye. Eat them with your highest carb meal of the day or as a pre-meal snack 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time. Not parked in front of the television. Not straight from a large bag. Raw almonds at Trader Joe's run under $6 and last about 2 weeks at the clinically studied daily portion. Quick pause here. Out of these 3, eggs, nuts, or avocado, which one do you eat most often for your health? Drop it in the comments below, and if anything I've gone over so far is new information for you, let me know that too. Now, avocado. This is the one where the research is the most specific about what it accomplishes, and yet the most misunderstood in terms of how to actually use it. A 12-week randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Nutrition found that when adults with insulin resistance swapped carbohydrate calories for avocado calories, keeping their total calorie intake unchanged, they showed meaningful improvement on their Matsuda Insulin Sensitivity Index. The Matsuda Index measures how efficiently your entire body responds to insulin overall. A better score means your cells take up glucose more readily, and your body needs less insulin to move the same amount of glucose, which is the central problem underlying insulin resistance. The key phrase in that study is replaced carbohydrate energy, not added on top of the diet, substituted in place of carbohydrates. This is the detail most people completely miss. Simply adding avocado to an already carb-heavy meal doesn't deliver the full benefit that study demonstrated. The improvement comes specifically from avocado taking the place of carbohydrates, not sitting next to them on the plate. Why does this work? The mechanism. Avocado is roughly 77% fat, primarily oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fat found in olive oil. Oleic acid lowers an inflammatory compound called interleukin-6, along with other cytokines that directly interfere with insulin receptor signaling. When those cytokines drop, insulin receptors on your muscle cells respond more readily, the door opens more easily, so to speak. Avocado's effect is fundamentally anti-inflammatory, not a direct glucose-lowering action the way cinnamon or apple cider vinegar might work. It builds over weeks, not hours. And then there's the fiber. A medium avocado contains roughly 10 grams of dietary fiber, which slows the absorption of any carbohydrates present in that same meal. The practical takeaway: use avocado to replace a carbohydrate serving, not to supplement one. Instead of toast with your eggs, try eggs with half an avocado, no toast. Instead of a side of rice with chicken and vegetables, swap in a quarter avocado. That substitution is exactly what the study was measuring, and that's where the improvement in insulin sensitivity came from. A ripe avocado from Walmart costs under $2 and delivers 10 grams of fiber along with nearly 20 grams of heart-healthy fat. No prescription needed, no pharmacy trip, just $2. Here's a detail about avocado that most people never hear about. The fat inside avocado also helps your body absorb fat-soluble nutrients from any vegetables you're eating alongside it. Carotenoids, the orange and red pigments found in carrots, tomatoes, and bell peppers, which help lower inflammation, require fat in order to be absorbed properly. Adding half an avocado to a salad or vegetable side dish doesn't just support blood sugar, it multiplies the nutritional payoff of every vegetable already on that plate. That's a compounding benefit. Here's something the studies rarely spell out directly. These three foods don't operate through the same mechanism. Each one works differently, and understanding that difference changes how you should actually use them. Eggs work through protein signaling. The protein triggers satiety hormones, specifically GLP-1, within about 30 minutes of eating. GLP-1 tells your pancreas to get insulin ready and slows how fast your stomach empties. GLP-1 happens to be the exact same pathway that medications like Ozempic and other GLP-1 agonists target pharmacologically. Your eggs are activating that pathway for free. Nuts work through anti-inflammatory fat. The monounsaturated fats and omega-3s in walnuts and almonds reduce cytokines, specifically interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha, which physically obstruct insulin receptors on your muscle cells. When those cytokines are elevated, insulin shows up at the receptor door and it barely budges open. Lower the cytokines and that door swings open wider, meaning less insulin is required to move the same amount of glucose. This effect is cumulative, 6 to 8 weeks of daily use, not a single serving, a consistent daily habit. Avocado works through a combination of substitution and anti-inflammation. Swap carbohydrate calories for avocado calories, and you get a smaller glucose spike immediately. The oleic acid in avocado lowers the same inflammatory cytokines that nuts do, compounding the receptor sensitivity benefit over time. 3 distinct mechanisms, 3 different time frames. Eggs act within the same meal, 20 to 30 minutes. Nuts build cumulatively over 6 to 8 weeks of steady daily use. Avocado delivers an immediate effect from substitution, plus an anti-inflammatory benefit that builds over weeks. This is exactly why consistency matters more than perfection. Eating 1 egg on 2 random mornings a week isn't the protocol these studies actually measured. A handful of walnuts on a random Tuesday won't move the inflammation markers that 8-week trials were tracking. The researchers who documented meaningful blood sugar improvement were studying daily, structured inclusion of these foods as part of an ongoing eating pattern, not sporadic additions bolted onto an otherwise unchanged diet. I realize this can sound like I'm asking you to overhaul everything. I'm not. Pick 1 consistent anchor per meal. Eggs at breakfast most mornings. A measured ounce of raw nuts before your biggest carb-containing meal. Half an avocado swapped in for 1 carbohydrate serving at dinner. 3 decisions, made once, repeated consistently. Consistency is where the biology eventually catches up, and it does catch up. I want to speak directly now to everyone watching who's currently on metformin. I know there are a lot of you. Some of you have been taking it for 8, 10, 15 years. I'm not telling you to stop. That decision belongs between you and your physician. What I do want to show you is what happens when you add these 3 foods consistently, in the right portions, in the right order, alongside whatever you're already taking. These foods act on insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. They lower the inflammatory signals that block insulin receptors. They slow carbohydrate absorption before it ever becomes a glucose spike your medication has to chase down. They're not a replacement for your medication. They're a way of reducing the workload on a system that's already being actively managed. And for some patients working closely with their physician and tracking their numbers consistently, that reduced workload has translated into lower required doses over time. That's not a guarantee. It's a documented outcome for some patients who commit to this seriously. Your kitchen is genuinely part of your treatment plan. That's simply true. If you're managing type 1 diabetes, I see you too. Most of what's covered in this video around insulin resistance applies primarily to type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. That said, the protein-first sequencing with eggs and the anti-inflammatory mechanism behind avocado, those are relevant for type 1 as well. The specifics around how and when may look different depending on your insulin regimen. Worth having a direct conversation with your endocrinologist as you think about adding these consistently. Now, 3 combinations that undo everything I've just described. This part matters. Combination 1, nuts with added coatings, honey roasted almonds, flavored mixed nuts, yogurt covered cashews. The nut itself is beneficial. The coating is essentially a sugar delivery mechanism. A tablespoon of honey glaze on a serving of almonds adds 8 to 12 grams of fast-absorbing sugar, directly canceling out the nut's blood sugar slowing effect. Stick to raw or dry roasted, lightly salted at most. That's the version used in the clinical studies. Combination 2, avocado paired with refined carbohydrates, guacamole with corn chips, avocado toast on white bread, avocado tossed into a flour tortilla wrap loaded with rice. Avocado's fat and fiber can soften the impact of a small carbohydrate load. It cannot neutralize a large serving of refined carbs. The study that showed a 34% improvement in insulin sensitivity replaced carbohydrates with avocado. Pairing avocado alongside a large carb portion simply doesn't produce that same effect. Substitution is the mechanism. You can't add your way into the benefit. Combination 3, eggs cooked in seed oils, vegetable oil, canola oil, soybean oil. The insulin sensitivity benefit from eggs is real, but high heat cooking in polyunsaturated seed oils generates oxidized fatty acids and advanced glycation end products. These compounds, AGEs in particular, directly drive insulin resistance and inflammation at the cellular level. You end up undoing with the oil exactly what you were trying to accomplish with the egg. Cook your eggs in butter, in olive oil over lower heat, or scramble them dry in a non-stick pan. The cooking fat isn't a minor footnote here. It's part of the actual protocol. I know what some of you are probably thinking right now. My doctor told me to limit egg yolks. My cardiologist told me to watch my saturated fat. How does that square with what you're telling me? That's a completely fair question, and I want to answer it head on. The research has genuinely shifted. The American Diabetes Association's most recent nutritional guidance no longer places a specific cap on egg consumption for people with type 2 diabetes, provided there's no existing cardiovascular disease. The 2019 ADA Standards of Medical Care noted that current evidence doesn't support restricting dietary cholesterol as a primary strategy for lowering cardiovascular risk in people with diabetes. Your cardiologist's guidance, if you already have heart disease, still takes precedence. I'm not overriding that. What I am saying is that the blanket 2 eggs a week rule many seniors were given back in the 1990s was based on science that has since been substantially revised. If that guidance was given to you more than 5 years ago and hasn't been revisited since, it's worth having a direct conversation with your current physician. Ask them plainly, given the current ADA guidelines on dietary cholesterol, do you still recommend that I limit eggs specifically? That's a legitimate clinical question that deserves a current, up-to-date answer, not one that's 20 years old. Second objection, I hear a lot. Avocado is expensive, I can't eat it every day. I understand that concern. A ripe avocado at Walmart costs under $2. Half an avocado a day as a carb replacement works out to roughly $30 a month. Compare that to a single copay or a month's supply of a blood sugar supplement. And if $2 a day genuinely doesn't fit your budget, frozen avocado, available at Trader Joe's and Walmart, costs noticeably less per serving and keeps the same fat and fiber profile. The texture isn't quite the same, but your biology D